A look back at the 1970s might bring up memories of disco, bell bottoms, and tanning beds. America's first tanning salon opened in 1978, thrusting society into an era of bronze skin all year long. Though once popular for its ability to darken skin in minutes, the option is widely known to increase the risk of skin cancer.
Tanning beds emit a much more intense dose of ultraviolet radiation exposure that is unnatural, beyond what a person would get from the sun. And they deliver this intense radiation over a matter of minutes. And the human body and the skin were not designed to deal with that kind of intense radiation exposure. So there's a lot of strong scientific evidence that shows that indoor tanning bed use strongly increases a person's risk of skin cancer.
That's Dr. Shadi Kourosh, Director of Community Health for Dermatology at Mass General Brigham. She explains the true purpose behind a summer tan.
So the reason that tanning in our skin exists is it was nature's original sun protective mechanism, but it's not that great. This is what was useful for a civilization where people were living to be about 35 years old, right? So skin cancer is really not an issue when people don't live to be old enough to develop it.
Kourosh says the amount of protection this natural tan provides is equivalent to an SPF of 8, which isn't much safety at all.
Our skin tans because it produces melanin that then acts as a kind of natural SPF in the skin, but it's not a very good one. And it's not one that really protects us from intense sun exposure, like going to the beach or being outside for a sporting event or, any of the things that we do in this day and age. And it certainly isn't going to protect us in the long run in a generation where people are living to be, not just 35 years old, but sometimes 2 and 3 times that lifespan.
And without adequate protection, our skin can be easily harmed. Fine wrinkles and dark spots are all results of damage to the DNA in our skin cells. Unfortunately, the first signs of damage appear with a bronzed glow. Kourosh says the idea of getting a healthy tan is deceptive because there's nothing good about what's happening inside the body.
A healthy tan doesn't exist because your body's tanning mechanism doesn't even turn on and start until after it senses that the DNA of skin cells has already been damaged. It's a response to DNA damage. So if your skin has started to tan, you're already in trouble. You should start to put on sunscreen rather than take it off.
And some of us may need more protection than others. Kourosh says the rules of skin safety are different for each person, which is why it's important to understand how to properly shield your skin, especially if you already have damage.
Areas of the skin that have been previously burned or scarred can have an increased risk of skin cancer. So there's a lot of factors that could affect whether an individual person would be at more or less risk and how much sun exposure they could get before it would become a problem for them.
But it's not just sun exposure that's harming our skin. Kourosh says research from the last few years has shown the damaging effects digital screens can have on our cell DNA.
There is actually a shortwave, high energy visible light, blue light, that is emitted by these devices, which over time, especially when people spend excessive amounts of time in front of the screens of these devices, this can potentially also be damaging to our skin and our eyes.
But screens aren't the only lurking danger. Kourosh also warns people to protect against pollution.
So there are certain chemicals in pollution, such as smog and the exhaust from motor vehicles, that can become airborne and then deposit on the skin of people that are exposed to it, corroding the barrier of the skin and causing DNA damage to the skin cells underneath.
And when the skin barrier is compromised, we become even more vulnerable to UV radiation.
People who live in urban metropolitan areas, especially those that are polluted, really need to be going the extra mile to apply sun protection.
Protection that often comes in the form of 2 major types of sunscreens, mineral and chemical. Chemical lotions protect against some forms of ultraviolet radiation. However, Kourosh says they don't do much to defend against other threats.
So in order to protect against a broad range of light and radiation and also against pollution, a person needs to choose a mineral sunscreen. And these are sunscreens where if you read the ingredients, there will be short names like zinc and titanium. And those are the ones that are also in sunscreens that will say like pure and free, chemical free, or the sunscreens for babies, actually. Those are mineral sunscreens like zinc. And so those are the most effective, and they're also the healthiest and the least likely to cause allergies.
Mineral sunscreens create a barrier over the skin that gives protection against a wide range of harmful light and radiation. Kourosh says after applying sunscreen in the morning, we should be reapplying the product regularly throughout the day to maintain its efficacy.
The testing for sunscreens, when they were originally developed, was only done for about 2 hours. So we actually don't know how well they hold up after a few hours. So that's why dermatologists often recommend for people to reapply their sunscreens every few hours.
And sunscreens aren't the only defense against skin damage.
Using serums that have retinols and antioxidants can be helpful as well, because they can help to absorb some of the damage that's caused by pollution. And then also a really good cleansing regimen is important, because these airborne chemicals and pollution deposit on our skin. And so it's really important when we, come home in the evening before bedtime to really cleanse our skin really well, because that helps to remove the pollution that may have settled onto it.
Kourosh says even makeup provides a bit of a shield against pollution. And though some damage, like wrinkles and sunspots, are reversible with laser treatments, she tells all her patients that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
If we build in these healthy habits of putting on a sunscreen, such as a mineral sunscreen, every morning and then reapplying throughout the day, a person can really help to slow that process of damage from different rays of sun and from pollution. And then that's really the best way. And then if certain interventions are combined with that, like a good skincare regimen and also procedural treatments like lasers, a person can really have the best result.
Skin cancer is largely preventable and curable if caught early. Kourosh recommends people visit their dermatologist at least once a year, especially those who fall into the high-risk category.
I've seen skin cancer in people as young as 20 years old. And so it's important to start getting skin cancer screenings in your 20s. And for people that have a family history of skin cancer, or if they have a history of severe sunburns, like blistering sunburns, for example, in childhood, or if they have a history of using indoor tanning beds, which can significantly increase a person's risk of skin cancer, then it's important to especially have a skin check.
You can find more information about Dr. Shadi Kourosh and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
Venom has been around longer than humans. Before there were neuroscientists, there were scorpions.
How scientists are using evolution's best weapon to cure medical conditions.
Then, how are mental wellness apps actually affecting your health?
It's a little bit tricky as a consumer to go through apps to figure out which ones could potentially be helpful and which ones are not going to harm you.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal. I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
It's not about just getting good reviews, and you can't rest on your laurels in that kind of way. Like, oh, we got a great review by the Chicago Tribune, we're good now. Like, no, we have to keep doing different things with our guests.
The many challenges of surviving the fine dining industry. Then,
most of us revert to some sort of what we call an adapter. It's a little nervous gesture.
What's your telltale sign when you're feeling tense or telling a lie? I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, and subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.